Now, there was in Germany a man who would, in fact, create the modern day liquid fueled rocket. He was Werner von Braun, born in 1912, and in his early years developed a fascination with the heavens and with the idea of going into space. And in the 1930s, he joined an amateur rocket society, which had started up in Germany. You see him in this picture, second from the right. And as the 30s progressed and the Nazis came to power, they basically recruited von Braun to develop a very powerful rocket that would serve as a weapon. That rocket, which von Braun developed with many other engineers working with him, was called the A4 to their terminology, and known to the rest of the world as the V2, which stood for Vengeance Weapon 2. And you see here a cutaway drawing of the V2. You can see how big it is compared to the human figure standing next to it. It's got its fuel supply is a mixture of alcohol and water, and the oxidizer again is liquid oxygen. Now, liquid oxygen exists at a temperature of hundreds of degrees below zero and must be handled with special machinery. This was part of the problem that von Braun's team had to solve. How do you create machinery, turbopumps, and so forth that will carry this super cold fluid into the combustion chamber and combine it with the alcohol-water mixture and ignite it so that the rocket produces a stream of hot gases which propels it upward, again, because it is obeying Newton's law of motion. Now, they solved many of those problems. The rocket achieved a thrust of about 50,000 pounds and was able to reach the edge of space at altitudes approaching 50 miles. And it was pretty much a successful rocket. You see here a successful test of the V2 at the German launch site of Peenemünde. But it was not a successful weapon. The main flaw with the V2 was that its guidance system was not very accurate. It used gyroscopes to sense its orientation and a system of carbon vanes which were installed at the bottom of the rocket to basically steer by means of deflecting the hot gases that were rushing out of the bottom of the rocket. And this system of steering and navigation was not effective enough to make the V2 an accurate missile. And even though the Germans launched quite a few of them against England in World War II, the V2 did not turn the tide of the war. And what happened next really was a pretty important moment for the future of space travel. And now here you see von Braun after the just in the last days after World War II was ending. Here's von Braun happily surrendered to American troops. He knew that as the Reich fell, as the Nazi regime fell, he knew that the Russians were not far off, and if they got to von Braun and his people first, they would take them to Russia. And von Braun absolutely hated the Russians, hated them, and wanted very much to go with the Americans, and was very happy to surrender himself to the American forces. Now, von Braun and many of his top people were taken to the United States, where in secret, they were secretly transported, and they were kept at Fort Bliss, the Army's base in El Paso, Texas. And there, they were put to work helping to develop and eventually launch captured V2 missiles, which were used not only for scientific purposes. Here you see a launch of a captured V2 with a very long, skinny second stage, a solid fueled second stage stuck on top of it. This was called Project Bumper, and basically the solid rocket upper stage would carry instruments into the very high upper atmosphere to try to give scientists information about conditions at those high altitudes. But of course, the Army's main interest was in developing more powerful rockets that could be used as weapons. Now, the V2 and the modern liquid-fueled rocket was one major technology to come out of World War II. But a second history-changing technology, of course, was the atomic bomb. And you see here a photograph of the very first atomic bomb test in New Mexico in 1945. And of course, the United States used atomic bombs against Japan, and that was the decisive blow that ended the war in the Pacific. As the war ended, people realized it didn't take very long for military planners to realize that if you could find a way to marry these two new technologies, the atomic weapon and the modern rocket, that you would have a weapon of incredible power. You could, in fact, create a missile with an atomic warhead that you could send thousands of miles away to enemy territory and cause tremendous devastation. And so the race began for the Intercontinental Ballistic Missile, or ICBM. Now, this race was begun in the United States in the early 50s, but it was also going on in the early 50s in the Soviet Union.